Like, it has to come from in here that you would want to work with kids because that's when it becomes less work and kind of more of a reason and passion of what you do.
Robert, as I always want to tell my guests, I really appreciate the hospitality here at Kids Can Community Center. And just when I'm setting up, just having the small conversations just to get this interview ready, I'm really happy to be here and happy to get your story out, along with the story of how this community center began,
Well, thank you for being here. Always try to roll out the red carpet, make it as easy as possible for
which
you.
you did a phenomenal job on.
Thank you.
I will give you credit for that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Forward to On Out podcast. I'm your host, as always, Connor Wiesman, and with me today, I have the Kids Can CEO with me, Robert Patterson. And Robert, once again, thank you for hopping on the interview with me. And for those who don't know what Kids Can Community Center it's been around, or the nonprofit organization has been around for over 100 years. It was named differently back in the time, but we'll get to that. And this nonprofit organization, they have early childhood programs and they have out of school programs for students. Your target range is ages anywhere from 5 weeks up to 13 years, correct?
Correct.
So before we get more into how this nonprofit started, I want to introduce you guys to Robert and hear his story a little bit. So Robert, can you please give a brief background story on yourself and who you are?
So currently the CEO of Kids Can Community Center, and just had my 15th anniversary last month. But I've actually been with the organization 27 years now. So started off as program director, and that kind of morphed into assistant executive director. So this is actually Kids Can. The organization is my second job out of college. So before we went on camera, we both have a similar undergrad degree, broadcast journalism. You're actually doing it more than I am, so hopefully I retain some of those skills. But I needed the first job out of college. You know, sometimes you just take what you can get, and that happened to be at a nonprofit muscular dystrophy association, which everybody's pretty familiar with. And it kind of suited me because, you know, they had the telethon, and so I knew had some of those skills ready to go. And then it's also nonprofit employees are pretty mobile, and so one of those people that came through at muscular dystrophy was Renee Franklin, and she was brought over to this organization to kind of really resuscitate it from the ashes because, you know, previous management had kind of misspent money, and they had one funder made up over 80% of the budget, so it was not in a healthy spot, and she was kind of really brought over to kind of help the organization kind of get back on its feet. And about 6 months later, she called me and said, I might have a job for you. And I was like, and it seemed risky at the time, you know, because it was like this organization could close its doors at any time. And so, but I took that risk and glad I did, and have been here ever since. But yeah, and we could obviously talk about the long history of the organization as well.
So I don't think you really explain. So you went from wanting to go being a journalist after graduating from the J School in Nebraska to being in education your entire life, or post college career. So what was, like, you said it was just a risk you wanted to take?
It was, I would say, purely by accident. You know, I also believe in serendipity. You know, like, yeah, you're in the right place at the right time for the right reason, whether you know it or not. And this is kind of how my nonprofit career happened. We talked about it as like my last semester in college. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that every day. And so, like, you know, you graduate and you come home and you need a job. And so I do need to thank the lady from whatever employment agency that brought me to that nonprofit organization, because she ended up being a career changer for me. And then once I got my feet wet in the nonprofit world, then I can't imagine anything else. But like I said, I feel like I'm still using some of my skills when writing press releases or doing testimony in front of the legislature. So those are all important skills that we learned in journalism.
Yeah, for sure. Now I kind of want to transition to how Kids Can began. So from my little bit of research I did with the nonprofit, this started back in 1908 in Omaha, but it had a different name. And then fast forward, I want to guess like the 80s was when they changed the Kids Can?
2009.
2000, okay,
Yeah,
I'm way off.
you're
Apologies
way
for that. But if you can share, you know the history of this nonprofit way more than I do. So can you share more about that history?
Sure. So the nonprofit became as part of the settlement movement. And so a lot of the social work students are very familiar with, you know, Jane Addams and the settlement movement. And what I like about and it was called Social Settlement Association. And so what I really liked about the social settlement concept is that different social settlement organizations were put into different communities, but they were each made to adapt to whatever that community needed. So what Social Settlement Omaha did was different than Social Settlement Chicago, which was different than Social Settlement New York. And I really like that concept because you're not painting yourselves into a corner. Whatever the community needs, that organization would adapt. And so that was an important piece of history. And if I'm reading, I still have my 1908 annual report. I still have a lot of these historical documents. And it was just literally a group of wealthy women that decided one night that they needed a settlement here in Omaha. And so they kind of started off small and continued to kind of grow. And while over a century now, we've done quite a few different programs, but when you look back, there was almost always a focus on children and families, and particularly in South Omaha. So that has resonated through the past 117 years with the organization.
So, and then you said the name changed to 2009.
Yeah, so we recognized Social Settlement Association was not doing us any favors fundraising or branding, but it was we realized we needed to do something. And I was having almost a textbook lunch. I was having lunch with a funder, and I said, "Well, what do you think is stopping us from, being more, kind of being better, hyperlinear awareness?" And she goes, "I think it's your name." And it was one of those sidewalk conversations. She goes, "Tell you what, if you want to do some focus groups or kind of come back to me, I'll put some money towards it to see about you changing your name." And so we met, with the board and did some surveys and so forth, and realized, the name is not. We spent more time explaining what we were who we were, and why the name didn't quite match. And so the name Kids Can was kind of one of our grants at one point, and so we just kind of added the community center aspect. And we were actually ready to change the name in 2008, but it felt kind of weird to me to change it on the 100th anniversary. I didn't want to give the illusion that we were just throwing the past away. So we waited to 2009. But at the time, it was around the time when the Sears Tower was becoming the Willis Tower in Chicago. I said, because it used to be like people really liked the history of social settlement, and some people still call us social settlement. And I said, for some people, myself included, it will always be the Sears Tower, no matter what the name is actually called now. And for some people, it would always be social settlement to them. So I kind of took that as we kind of move forward. But it did kind of create a new breath of fresh air for the organization, and it really kind of elevated us. And now people are like, if you don't know exactly what we do, you have some concept that we're doing something with kids.
Got it. So the Kids Can mission statement is engage, or let me rephrase, educate, engage, and inspire children through early childhood. Can you elaborate more on that, like word by word? So educate, I'm assuming, I don't want to overthink it, but educate students.
Yeah, we were intentional with when we did, created the mission, of course, with those three words: educate, engage, and inspire. So when I think of educate, especially for early childhood, is making sure these kids are ready for kindergarten. Because my version of kindergarten is much different than yours, and probably much different than the kindergartners now. I mean, it's almost, they're at first, second grade level of expectations when they start school. My kindergarten, I think it was still half days, if that. And so they really need to be kind of ready to go. And so our early childhood program, so we go as young as 6 weeks old up to 5 years old. And the whole intent of that is to make sure that they're as ready for school as possible. And so that's a key piece of it. Engage, and this is kind of more for our out of school programs, is that we want to make sure our school agers are engaged into their school and in their academics and their work. Because once you're disengaged from school, it leads to dropouts, less attendance, disinterest in academics and schools, and then where that path goes. And so while we're not supposed to be school 2.0, in our after school programs or our summer programs, we want to make sure kids are kind of excited about that and engaged in the work they do. And we have something we call STEM Smart Academy. So STEM, everybody's pretty familiar with the science, technology, engineering, and math. And I added the SMART part of it several years ago because I wanted more. I 100% believe in STEM, but I also wanted to kind of give a whole picture. So the small S stands for strength, and that means inner and outer strength. When I first thinking, I was thinking more kind of mobile and activity, but inner strength became something super important, especially during the pandemic for our kids. The M&A is music and art because that's one of the first things that gets pushed off the plate at school. Or if there's any budget cuts, that seems to always the way. So music and art were very important to me as a child, and I also think it's important as as our brains are kind of forming and so forth. I look back, I'm not sure. I was a band geek, and I was like, now I look back, I'm like, I don't know how I was able to memorize where to put my fingers and the hand-eye coordination, but that's all important to kids. Reading is the small R, so literacy is the foundation for everything we do, and the T is for tutoring because homework help. That's just a natural part of our after-school program. So STEM Smart really is the core of all of our kind of out-of-school programs.
Just out of curiosity and just for context as well, are you a father or do you have any nieces or nephews?
I have 0 kids, so you would think maybe it's kind of strange that I work at a place for kids, but and that questions came up before. Is like, well, why are you here? And I think for me, it really kind of became early on about equitability for every kid to have the same opportunity, whether they live at 48th and Q or 248th and Q, or to make sure that they have the same opportunities to be successful and ready for school as any other kid. So that's kind of why I think I've been here so long, because that's kind of really at the heart of why I do what I do and why I get up every day and show up here.
Do you kind of feel like an outsider? Because you didn't get an education degree, you got something totally different, and now who you are, you've been here for 27 years now, 15 years as the CEO, which we'll get more into later. Do you still feel like that outsider, whereas you work with teachers and mentors with students?
I wouldn't say outsider. What I do, because I do depend on our great teachers and our staff and our STEM coordinators and our mentoring coordinators and kind of all these. They're all experts in their own field. And what I've really seen my role as CEO is more of a orchestra conductor, because I may not know how to play every instrument, but I do know that we all need to work together and start on the same note and the same cadence and so forth. And so that's kind of how I've seen my role over the years. So my brain wouldn't be able to retain all of that, and nor would I want to. But that's why I really appreciate our fantastic teachers and early childhood coordinators and out-of-school site directors, because they're the ones that are making the difference every day. They're the ones that make the impacts on the kids. And my job is just to make sure that we all kind of work together, that everything is funded, of course, and that we're creating an environment where staff and children can flourish.
So as of 2024, you had a total of 1,283 students. When you first started, what was that number?
Much less.
Can you kind of talk about that growth?
I think back in '98. So the number of students was probably just slightly over 100 kids per year that we served, because we had some preschool program, and that we went as young as, I think, 4 and 5-year-olds. We might have went down to 3-year-olds. So that's the youngest that we went, and it wasn't even a full day program. And we had a school age program where we did after school programs where our vans would go to a couple schools and kind of pick those kids up, bring them back, for after school programs and our summer programs as well. And so it was pretty small and pretty isolated. And I do remember in '98 our budget was $350,000, and so not much. So we had a lot of room for growth. And I kind of fast forward a little bit. In 2010, when I took over as CEO, our budget had grown to $750,000. So not a huge, double, but not kind of huge strides. And I remember a funder said, if you really want to be taken seriously as an organization, you need to be $1 million organization. I was like, all right. I remember sitting with our executive, like, how are we gonna do this kind of dynamic growth, in 3 years? It was kind of not the challenge to kind of put out there, and so I also kind of believe throwing it out there in the universe, and it happened, and then a short while later, I think 2019 we were at 2.5 million, and somebody put out there, you need to be at a $5 million organization, and in 2024 we were. And so part of it is the growth. Obviously, it's just not dollar wise, but continuing to keep adding more programs and serve more kids. So in addition to everything we do at this building, so we haven't talked too much about our school agers, but we do before school and after school programs right here at our organization. So we have vans that pick up the kids and bring them back to school for after school program. But we also open at 6 a.m. So kids are dropped off here, have breakfast, and then we take them to school as well. And then anytime school is closed for obviously the summer, spring break, parent-teacher conferences, in-service days, many more days. I didn't have this many days off when I was in elementary school, but we're open 6 to 6 on those days because not everybody has grandma down the street or a place for their children to go that is in a safe place. And so we're open anytime school is closed for the most part, except for some major holidays. Or if it's too icy out, we're not able to get staff in. But in addition to that, we have 8 school-based sites where we do after-school programming right on site in North and South Omaha. And so that's an important piece to be able to provide programming in place at the school. So parents can still pick up right from the school. They don't need to cut another place to go to. But same thing, making sure those kids are excited and engaged in their schoolwork, and really don't see school as a negative, because we really, our goal is to make sure these kids are continue to be inspired and graduate.
You kind of brought it up how like some kids, they don't have grandma or gramps to go to over those spring breaks and all that. So, and that led me to this question. So back to that report I found on your website back in 2024, 52% of the kids come from an annual household income of under $30,000. And for context for the audience, as of last year, the U.S. median household was over $83,000. So is that common around the country where it's like say like there's like another Kids Can Community Center in Arkansas or Florida, where it's like, okay, this is kind of like we need to do something, so let's make them a nonprofit, support these families. Is that common?
It's probably more common than you think that obviously after school programs are part of every community, and there's varying levels of depth and quality. So what's important for us, and as a nonprofit, this is where we kind of have we're a little bit able to kind of provide some value add that other programs maybe are not able to, because when we talk about providing quality costs, and quality, I mean, essentially quality cost equals quality people. And if you want to, we want the best people for our kids. So that cost. And so the rate that we may charge for private pay or to be reimbursed through the state through child care subsidies, that's not going to cover it. And so thankfully to our funders and our supporters and our foundations, we're able to provide high quality care at either lower cost or no cost to our parents. And so that's an important part of, I think that's another reason why I've been here so long, because I get that aspect that my after school program when I was a kid was Gilligan's Island and the Brady Bunch after school. I was the latchkey kid that we walked home by ourselves and that was it. That's not the case, nor should it be the case in 2025, that kids really need to be in a safe place first and foremost, and continually to kind of feed their brains with everything to make sure they're excited about STEM projects and getting mentored by an adult, caring adult who can do different activities with them.
Can you name those funders that help out Kids Can?
So probably the usual suspects, but obviously in Omaha we have obviously the Logier Foundation and the Sherwood Foundation and the Kiewit Foundation, just to name a few. But these are the ones that really understand the need for both out of school and early childhood programs. And when you kind of talk about level the playing fields, that when over half have a household income of under 30,000, some are certainly living at poverty level, but there's a lot of families that are that paycheck to paycheck families where you could be one paycheck away, or one car accident away, or one medical bill away from poverty, that they're walking that thin line. So childcare is a huge expense no matter what income you make, and it gets more expensive the younger you go. And so a lot of our families are usually young families. They're not making the most, as the 20 something, old, they're having their first child and so forth. So we really want to make sure that while our programs are for the kids, they really are tailor made to the working families and the working parents.
Back to that data, 11% of 5 to 6 year olds to 5-year-olds attended here, and then the other 89% were the ages 6 through 13. Has that changed much this year?
A little bit, yeah. We've seen our school agers increase quite a bit. We kind of saw obviously during, we had the pandemic, 5 years ago. And so we did see a huge, obviously, dip at that time, because there's some programs that we just could not do during the early days of the pandemic. And to go back to March 2020, we only closed for 2 weeks. We closed at the end of March 13th. I remember it was that Friday the 13th. And then we decided to reopen 2 weeks later because we recognized a lot of our parents still had to work and could not work from home. But the guidelines at the time were, I think it was 10 kids per room. And, that means we could not serve every kid that we wanted to, like we had in the month prior. And so that meant we kind of had to make a choice on who gets into the door. And so first we let parents who were essential workers, first responders, healthcare. We included gas stations, grocery stores, anything that we still depended on that they could not work from home. We wanted to make sure that they had a place so they could go to work and had a safe place for their kids. And as the guidelines changed and we continued to expand, that we were able to kind of make sure that we could serve more kids. But obviously school was not in session. And so we did our best. We could not provide in-person after-school programs. And so we tried to be as creative as possible. And we failed sometimes, but there's a few successes along the way, but a lot of lessons learned. And so I look back and I was like, it was probably a little crazy of me to try to kind of push that, but it worked out best for the organization and worked out for our parents to be able to do it in that way. But we're still seeing the ripple effects of COVID as families are getting more kind of back into the groove and kids are getting into the groove. And you have to remember, it's like our third and fourth graders now, their first year of kindergarten was remote, and that is not ideal. And so there's a lot of classroom management, behavior issues that our teachers and schools are particularly kind of dealing with, and we'll continue to see those ripple effects for the next generation.
So when you said you were closed for those first 2 weeks, that Friday, March 13th, and then 2 weeks after that, you guys came back. So how strict? Like what programs or activities were like cut off? Practically a bunch, right?
Yeah. So for the most part, we only opened early childhood programs, and so that was at the time toddlers, 18 months old up to 5 years old, and so that was kind of our first kind of step into that. And I look back, and now it kind of that made sense. I mean, we covered up the water fountains, and we were kind of trying to. We were, this was still a time where, if you remember, we were wiping down groceries with, Clorox wipes and stuff like that. We didn't even know what was airborne, what was not. It was hard to find masks for staff at the time. And so bit by bit, we kind of continued to expand. And I remember when school went to remote, I think that first fall, we realized a lot of our parents could not have their kids at home doing remote school. So we did open up our gym. And I remember it looked like Star Wars to me because I looked down at the gym and, kids were at 2 at a table, 6 feet across, masks, each had their own headphones and laptop doing their schoolwork. But it was almost eerie because it was completely silent, because every kid was doing their schoolwork. But it was important for me to be able to do that. And we opened up a second location at Miller Park, the Pavilion. And what really resonated with me is that I remember one of the Miller Park teachers commented that that was the first time she had seen some of her students even online because their parents just weren't able to do it, or they didn't have the internet connectivity and so forth. So it was important to me. It was like, okay, we were doing the right thing at the time and making sure these kids had a place to go.
As you brought up, at your original location off of Miller Street?
No, so Miller Park is in North Omaha.
Okay.
So we do, that's kind of our North O kind of sister. The Pavilion, we do summer programs out of there as well. So we try to do both North and South quadrants.
So that one's still open?
So that's through the city. So
Okay.
it's the City Park Pavilion. They let us use it for out of school programs when needed.
And then, as we were talking about before I started the interview, this building is only 2 years old. So and it was worth, the campus is $11 million of construction and all that?
Yep. So other people have heard me say I don't recommend doing a capital campaign during a pandemic, but we did, and we're successful. But our old building is about 2 blocks to the west, and that was built actually for us in the 1960s. But as you can imagine, after 50 years, it was not serving us well anymore, and especially we wanted to do early childhood programs in the classrooms. The windows, didn't even start till like 5 feet up, so kids couldn't even see out the windows. And one of the things we really wanted to do was add infant care. Infant care is hugely expensive no matter what income you make, and that building it's just not made for that. And so I finally put on my big boy pants and decided to do a capital campaign, And we really liked our location. And I really didn't. The other thing, I also didn't want to close programs at all, because if we had to close our programs to tear down the building and build a new building, for 18 months or 2 years, that puts a lot of families, out of service, and I didn't want to do that. So, fortunately, this land that we are in now used to be where Ashland Park Elementary used to be decades ago, and now the new elementary is a few blocks even farther past our old building. So OPS kind of owned this land, and so it became the prime spot for us, and we were able to build the building and then move over without disrupting any programs at all the entire time. So we're double the square footage, and I say double the noise, but we are actually more than able to kind of double the number of kids that we are able to serve on a daily basis just in this building as well.
With Robert Pattinson being CEO of Kids Can, do you see another expansion, whether it's a different building or even adding on to this building?
Well, if Robert Pattinson was the CEO, then yes, but I'm still Patterson. So
did I say Pattinson?
You did say it. Yeah, it comes up more often than you think.
We just talked about this too.
We just talked about that. So
apologies for that.
It's always disappointing when Robert Patterson shows up instead of Robert Pattinson, but I feel like I should use that to my advantage somehow. But and now I lost your question that you asked me.
No, you're all good. I said, as with Robert Patterson being CEO of Kids Can, does he see an expansion to this building, or even seeing another building being built, let's say in North Omaha or another troubling part of Omaha or Nebraska? Do you see, as long as you're CEO, just an expansion or an addition anywhere?
Yeah, so we're always kind of looking like what would make sense, where are we needed, because we also want to just kind of show up where we think we're needed, whereas Kids Can actually needed, and what is our part in the community. And so our latest endeavor, and it's been kind of quietly announced, but I think it'll be about a year and a half away, that One World Community Health Centers down in South Omaha is building a new building, and we will be the child care provider on the first floor of that building. So not only for One World staff, but for any neighborhood and community members in that area. So that'll be our first kind of called satellite location for early childhood. So we're excited about that to continue to grow. But yeah, I don't know how many. Like I said, I need to put my big boy pants on more often and to kind of do those capital campaigns. But they're expensive and they're hard to do. And you want to make sure that you're also not setting yourself up for failure. You need to make sure you have your business model set up right, and that this is a viable program that will be sustainable as well.
I'm personally interested in how Kids Can recruits their teachers and mentors. Is it just like an apply online thing, and then people just do a basic application, and people come in for an interview, share their experience, their stories, and then is that how you guys?
I would say all of the above. Yeah.
Okay.
So obviously for almost, I think any company, word of mouth is usually the best way, that people they have a place that they like to work. Obviously, when I think of our teachers, we try to go to the, either, Metropolitan Community College for those that are just getting their early childhood associate's degrees, or some of those kind of people that are really wanting to, work with kids, and especially kind of that early childhood concept. The hardest part is to find those part-time after-school workers, because it's part-time work, and it's only at certain times after school, so you can't make your own schedule. It used to be kind of lucrative for college kids. Used to love that, and it seemed to be not so much anymore. But I feel like they're kind of coming back to that. So because working with kids is tough. It's exhausting. It's a lot. It's a burden. That you have the safety and so much kind of on the shoulders of our employees to make sure kids are having safe time, quality interactions, and so forth. But it's exhausting. That's why I'm in this job and not that job, because I don't think I would last a full day, or I'd collapse at the end of the day. But thank you also for bringing up mentors, because that was one program that completely ended during the pandemic, because we weren't even letting parents into the building, let alone non-essential adults. And so our mentoring program, I really like, and I call it entry-level mentoring, because it all takes place here at Kids Can. And so once you are matched with a kid, you have it more or less set up. So every Thursday at 4:30, you come and meet with Brian. And the great thing is that our Julie is our mentoring coordinator, and she has huge closets of activities for, either baking or STEM games or different activities that you can kind of choose from. And the reason I call it entry level mentoring because that's how I started. And but we also have a partnership with Big Brothers Big Sisters. So if a kid ages out or if they move, if both parties agree, they can just transfer that mentorship to Big Brothers Big Sisters. So mentoring just doesn't stop because life changed. So that's what I did with my mentee. After a couple years of mentoring him here, he moved to a different school, and then we transferred our mentoring over to Big Brothers Big Sisters. And then I realized, like, oh, I have to figure out weekend schedules and activities and stuff, which was great. I mentored him for over 10 years. But I was just like, oh, I didn't realize how easy I had it at Kids Can Mentoring.
You said so. You're not only your CEO, you're still a mentor as well.
He actually just officially aged out. He's 21 now. So
I was just talking
yeah.
about you. Are you still a mentor?
Oh yeah. So I not officially through him anymore because he's now 20. He hit 21, and so that's when the formal mentorship ended with him. So, but yeah, I mentored him for over 10 years. So it was interesting to see him grow up, and I couldn't believe a teenager still talk to me about. We had a lot in common, and I'm not saying we do ask for 1 year of mentorship. We're not asking for 10 years, but as important as all of our early childhood programs and out of school programs, we also recognize it's that one caring adult that a kid has in their life, that not necessarily their parent, but it could be their teacher or it could be a mentor. That is sometimes the key difference in how they will continue to be successful in life. And so that's why that hour a week might seem like a lot, but 3 to 4 hours a month. I understand we're all busy, but we certainly have no problem finding 3 to 4 hours a week to watch Netflix and everything else. So it does make a difference. So I'm always encouraging volunteers to be a mentor and kind of make that commitment for a kid.
What's currently the hardest challenge of being a nonprofit in education right now?
The first thing that comes to my mind is like what's always funding. That even though we are a nonprofit, I think we talk about money more than everything because a lot of times nonprofits are expected to operate as lean as possible, and almost so lean that that we're almost emaciated. That it just takes one little wrong thing to go, and that we're kind of underwater. So wanting to make sure that nonprofit doesn't mean that we make $0 or we're just doing the very least, but we really want to make sure that we're being paying competitive wages to our individuals and our teachers and ourselves to make sure that we are getting the best talent and people for our kids. And so money is always kind of an issue. Advocacy is something that I've continued to over the past 10 years really kind of work on because I realized systemic changes really start at the legislative in Nebraska, in the legislature. And we are state licensed childcare, so we do depend a lot on childcare subsidies for our lower income families. Those childcare subsidies either pay in full or mostly full for their childcare. And so that's kind of money that comes back to us. That doesn't cover all of our costs, like I said, but it's an important part of our earned revenue. So we're not just depending on our foundations and our fundraising to provide programming. And then recently, over the past few years, I did the Policy Leadership Academy, and then last year I did Lobby School. So I have more tools in my toolbox. So when I am speaking to state senators, or if I'm presenting a bill that I have as much kind of, I would say not expertise, but knowledge to be able to do that as well. And so one of the things we briefly talked for is that childcare subsidies are going to be under fire here. So during the pandemic, thank you to some funding, Nebraska was able to move the eligibility rate from 130% to 185% of federal poverty level. So if you're not familiar with the federal poverty level, it doesn't matter what state you are. This is kind of the determiner of what it is for the United States. For 185%, just to give you, it kind of varies for the number of people in your household, but for a family of 4, that means it's just under $60,000, so around $59,000. If you make more than that, you're not eligible for subsidies. If you make less than that, you are eligible for subsidies, either in full or full. Now, if you're thinking two parents and two children, that means both parents could be working full time at like $14.50 per hour. So it's not that much, and also considering that minimum wage will be $15 an hour in a couple months in Nebraska. So we're talking about I say very lower income families that are really kind of working paycheck to paycheck. If they didn't have those subsidies, if, for example, they had one infant and one school ager, that could be $20,000 a year in childcare, and that's a third of their income just gone for childcare. So it's not sustainable for them as a family. So that's why childcare subsidies are really important, to be able to kind of keep that at 185%. Now it's set to sunset to 130% a year from now, unless our legislature takes action. And so I know Senator DeBoer is bringing back her bill, LB 304, to kind of hopefully kind of keep that from happening and really kind of keep it at 185%, because if it does go back, back down to 130%, there's going to be a lot of families in trouble. And it's also when, we're talking about parents and kids, but we're also talking about the workforce, that this is going to hit the workforce hard. So parents are going to have to do what they need to do to kind of make ends meet. So they might instead of working full-time, they might work part-time, or they might have to deny that raise, or they couldn't work as many hours, to be able to make ends meet. So if they need to make sure that they are able to have childcare subsidies. So it's something that me and my peers will be working on in the fall and in the spring to make sure that we can protect that for our families.
You brought up earlier how you talk to governors, senators about like what needs to be improved within the education system all over the state. How often do you talk to them?
It kind of depends. Our current senator, so here in the Kids Can neighborhood, is Senator Margot Juarez, and so she just had her first year as senator, and I've known her for years as kind of part of the neighborhood. So I was excited to see her kind of take on this new role. And as a matter of fact, she one of her first bills is a bill that I brought to her. It was called the Child Care Safety and Security Act. So my intent with that bill, and it didn't go through last year, so we're going to try again this year, but that bill would ensure, so if something's happening in the neighborhood, like there's a police chase or a bank robbery, schools get automatically notified, that something's happened in the neighborhood, so they can take action. They can either do a lockdown or what have you. Child cares are not included in that. So I remember a little over a year ago that parents were calling us because there was a police foot chase not too far from Kids Can. And we had to depend on parents and Omaha Scanner and Facebook to make those decisions. And I was like, this isn't right. We need something changed. And so I've been working with Senator Juarez and then different kind of entities to make sure see if we can get that. So for every child care would also be included, because it just comes back to the safety of the kids. But the thing to remember about state senators, they're just people too. And the other thing I tell people to also remember when you're talking to state senators is that they have many, many bills that come through, whether depending on what committee they are or just as a whole legislature. And so you're almost always the expert in the room, that they want to learn from you, like what is the actual issue and how can it be solved. So that's what I always think about, that they're not these untouchable entities. They're just people like you and me.
You said that her first bill that she passed was...
Well, she wasn't able to pass, but it was one of her first bills that she brought forward.
Was your idea. Mm-hmm. That's super cool.
And so it was another bill that did not get through from a previous senator. And so I'm like, I need to bring this back. And she agreed. And that was actually the first time she provided testimony in front of the Health and Human Services Committee. So I was behind her, quietly cheerleading her on. But she did a great job. And so I'm excited for her second year. To see, because I imagine that first year you're just learning everything as you go along. But she did a great job.
That's awesome. That's cool to hear. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. I want to talk more about the building now. So you said there's a gymnasium, and I'm just speaking from what I've just learned today. You said there's a gymnasium, and I've just walked through this hallway of just offices. So how many classrooms do you guys have? I saw you guys have a play set or a playground just outside. So what else? How many classrooms do you have?
You'll get the VIP tour after this.
Okay, so, yeah. I'd love to have that.
Yeah. So in our new building, on the early childhood side, we have 6 classrooms, 2 infant, 2 toddler, 2 preschool. And then I really kind of made those, I say pretty big, because our previous building, we had small classrooms, and I might have overdid it a little bit, but I just wanted big windows and a lot of space for the kids because that's what they deserve. The other aspect is to make sure they had all kind of the amenities that they needed, like the mother's room and laundry, sanitation, everything was kind of right there as well. So that's kind of the early childhood side. For the out of school program, in our old building, they were kind of relegated. We had a gym, but it was a smaller gym, and that's where they were kind of relegated to do their programs. So we made do, and it was kind of coats thrown on the floor, and that's just the way it worked. So in our new building, we gave them 3 specific classrooms. So 2 kind of one classroom, I call it the carpeted classroom, one kind of vinyl classroom if they need to go a little bit messy. And my third room is my favorite. We call the STEM lab. And so that room, you'll see we did a little bit differently. But in there is esports and robotics and soccer drones and 3D printing and kind of all the fun stuff and all the stuff that goes way over my head. But we also have a big gym, and I made it a little bit bigger compared to our old building to make sure we had some spectator space.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I liked how you said there's like not like a lab. What did you just?
We call it the STEM lab.
STEM lab.
Yeah.
Okay.
In that room we did a little bit differently. So it kind of has a polished floor, exposed ceiling, so we can kind of bring the electrical cords down, kind of depending on what we're doing. And like I said, I really depend like on our STEM coordinator because he's the one that is kind of knowledgeable and he knows what's zombie tag and everything else that I'm not even that familiar with, but that's what excites kids and excites him as well.
Can you possibly share a story of how a family was very appreciative of how Kids Can has affected their children? I'm pretty sure you have many, but do you have one off the top of your head?
When you said that, first thing that I was reminded of is Amy and Maddie, and so because Amy is one of those parents that had spoke a couple of times at our different luncheons, and so Amy she came to us when it was social settlement at the time. She became a single parent suddenly, was not expecting that. It was a waitress trying to make ends meet, and she just wanted a safe place for her daughter Maddie. And her mom at the time said, "Well, look at social settlement, and I know Robert over there, And so she brought her in, and she continually thanks us as kind of being the kind of foundation to make sure that she could go to work. She had a safe place, that she knew Maddie was in a safe place, but also getting those early childhood skills and going to be ready for school, and really made sure that no matter how chaotic Amy's life was, she was dealing with that Maddie was kind of protected from that, and she had a place to go, and that this was kind of her space. And the reason I bring that up because I've been here so long. Fast forward 20 plus years, Maddie came back here as a parent, bringing her son. And I would say not similar situation, but she knew this is where she wanted her son to be at Kids Can. And so for me, it's the kind of those multi-generational aspects that come to light and are really meaningful to me, that this is the home away from home for a lot of our families here. So it's important to me, and I'm thinking back because we had a great video where it was Maddie, Amy, and then Grandma as well. Everybody, they were all here, and just kind of, I should say, singing the praises of Kids Can. But it was a reminder to me, like, here's why I get up every day, and here's why I do what I do.
That's awesome. On my social media page, I see like cute kids just graduating from preschool or whatever, and they're like, a teacher or the principal or the CEO would be like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they're like a cowboy or a McDonald's worker or an entrepreneur even. Do you guys have a graduation ceremony here?
We do. And so every May, and we do the pomp and circumstance and the caps and gowns and all the fun stuff. Our early childhood also has a holiday program, which kind of depends on the year. Sometimes they're more. Some of these kids are almost not quite Broadway level, but they got it going. They have their stage presence and are not afraid to dance and sing. It's funny you say that because a few weeks ago we did for little kids what they wanted to be if they could be an adult for a day or whatever, and we had some of those aspects. And my favorite one is like, I want to be a doctor like my grandma. I was like, oh, that was probably the one that stuck out most to me.
What is one sentence you hope every kid says when they move on from Kids Can?
Oh, that's a tough one. I didn't get any of these questions beforehand, so that's tough. Because like at one point they probably like, I remember that place. What I would hope is like, and I've heard this from people that kind of went through when it was social settlement before, is that that was a place where I felt safe and that was a place where I had adults who cared about me. When we had our first open house showing off a ribbon cutting, showing our new building, in the classroom right across the hall, there was a somebody I knew that had worked here before I even started, and she bumped into another gentleman, and he called her. He's like, Melissa? I was like, yeah, and he was a kid here at the time, and he thanked her for being there for her. So those are the kind of things, like, I couldn't have forced that if I tried, that these two people would be in the same place at the same time, and he would remember her decades later. And it was nice for her to kind of hear that you are making these differences in the kids' lives, and they remember. And I don't know about you, I look back and I remember that one teacher that meant something to me, or sometimes it's the smallest things, but those are the things that do make a difference in kids' lives.
I want to go back to the classroom. So with AI just growing, businesses, even schools are probably using it nowadays. Has Kids Can, do you guys use AI at all to help students or like help teachers teach?
Not too much, so that when you visit our early childhood classrooms, there is almost zero technology, because we really believe on the hands-on and the play aspect. And then we were pre-COVID, as anti-screen as possible. But during COVID, we almost forced kids to be in front of the screens more than, when we talk about remote school, remote learning. They were in front of screens more than any of us wanted to, either as parents or kind of an education field. And so it is kind of trying to find that fine line of like what we want to kind of have the hands-on activities for them. And that's when I think about, obviously esports is a huge thing. But I think you'd be surprised at how many kids that they're into the technology, but they are still in the kind of the physical stuff. And if you're looking across you see the art room that they did for my office and so forth. It was like, they still like, they even made my little Mr. Robert name plaque and so forth. So they still like that kind of physical stuff. And that's where, when I think back, the things that meant something to me is it was kind of doing those field trips that I don't think schools even do anymore. Like, we go to the post office, or I know we bring them to like the bread making company and so forth. Those are things that stick out and you remember more than hopefully I think you would in front of your screen that day. But
Personally, as a guy who has ADHD, I'm very hands-on too. So I just can't sit still. So I like what you said, the field trips with like the post office, the bakery. I think that's super unique. I think school trips just include visiting the Capitol and the zoo. That's really it. So.
Yeah, probably not too much. Yeah, as you know, it's not too much anymore. It's expensive to do. The other thing, and especially during the summer programs, because we have a lot more time to be able to do that, is bringing them to places they might not normally be able to visit for one reason or the other, whether it's time or money or resources, to make sure that they have some of those same opportunities. And it's not just say the fun stuff, but it could be El Museo Latino or going to the Luminarium or what have you, to make sure that they have those same opportunities. And it kind of opens their eyes too. You never know what will resonate. You could be at the zoo and like, oh, I now have an interest in animals, or I now have an interest in such and such. That could be the spark. You just never know it. Yeah,
that's what the point of those field trips are for. Hopefully, 100%, so
yeah, that's the inspire part of our mission, is to inspire them to kind of think beyond the classroom walls.
You said earlier in this interview, Kids Can is not School 2.0, but you do collaborate and partner with Omaha Public Schools and other districts as well. How do you partner with those, and how does that work out?
Sure. So a lot of our after-school programs are through Collective for Youth, which is kind of the spine network of after-school programs that work with OPS. And so it's nice to work with them, and they represent over 40 different after-school programs and about 8 different agencies like Kids Can, to make sure that if an after-school program is needed, that they're going to where it's most needed, and utilizing 21st Century Learning funds as well as some private foundation funds. But they want to make sure that they are selecting schools that need the programs the most, or where the kids are needed the most. So they also can provide guidance, as well as some kind of making sure that quality programs, because there can be a lot of after-school programs out there, but you'd want high-quality programs that are consistently kind of working to make sure that you're having the outcomes that you want to see in the kids. So we really depend on them kind of for that. But we're also in Mandela schools to provide their after school program for their elementary school as well as their early childhood program. So we do aftercare in those schools as well.
I should have asked this earlier, but when I asked you about the classrooms, you said 2 rooms for infants, toddlers, and school-agers, which I'm assuming are, you mean teenagers or?
Yeah, so no, actually, so for on the early childhood, it's 2 infant, 2 toddler, and 2 preschool. So that goes up to age 5.
Okay.
And then for our school agers, we do 5 to 8. I think we're licensed up to age 13, but usually around 11 or 12 is when they begin aging out. So
Okay.
So those are the school agers. So we have not dipped our toe quite into the teenage realm yet, but could be on the horizon. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
What's your proudest moment of being the CEO here?
There's been many, and the first thing that came to my mind is when we did our open house for families with our new building. One in my mind is like they just need to get the lay of the land so they know what classroom to go to, and in the new building and whatever. And so we opened it up to parents and the kids. So seeing them walk through the halls through their eyes, and some of them parents had tears in their eyes. I was just any blood, sweat, and tears that it took to raise the money and to kind of put up this new building was all worth it for those moments to realize that, okay, we did the right thing here. We're creating an environment for these families that they truly appreciate and will also be here for generations to come.
Where do you see Kids Can in 2030?
We already go to 2040. So we had a Kids Can 2040 vision that we created in January 2020. So we didn't know what was on the horizon a couple months later. But part of it is continue to be better at what we do, expand to make sure that we're serving more kids because that's what it comes down to. There's still many kids that don't have after school programs, or there's just not enough childcare slots, or infant care. That's something that's just is a constant need in this community. So kind of be able to do that, but also do it at such a quality level that it's kind of recognized for that. So our kind of bigger 2040 vision is to, not just what we do, but how can we do a bigger circle and continue to expand of what we do, but also do it well.
How many teachers are currently teaching here or helping out here?
Good question. So I know we have over 150 staff across the organization. So,
Got it.
As I grow with the organization over the past almost 3 decades, I know we started off with a staff about 20, and so as we continue to grow, it's hard for me to keep track.
No, that's fair.
of all these things in a good way. I think that's probably a good problem, but the programs are open 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So you can imagine staffing is super important for 12-hour days. So there's just not normal shifts that we have to deal with. To make sure that we're covered at all times. So we have a lot of great teachers here.
Awesome. Very cool to hear. I'm just trying to think. I think I have all the questions I already asked you. So, Robert, I really appreciate this opportunity interviewing you and just you sharing more about Kids Can. And I guess I can ask if a parent's listening or watching this right now and they're really interested to learn more about Kids Can, where could they find more information about that?
Yep. Our website is kidscan.org, so pretty simple. And you could be able to find a lot of information about our programs, our locations, kind of everything we do. So kidscan.org is the place to go. And we're on all the social media aspects as well, Facebook and X and YouTube and all that as well. So you can check us out there.
I guess one question that popped up in my head just now, similar to you with how you went from like getting a degree in something totally different than education and then working in education. So as of post-college, if someone wants to do that, whereas, I got this degree, but it relates nothing to education, but they want to jump in that education industry, what are motivating words or I guess, it's such a simple word. What is it? Advice. Thank you. Yeah. What advice do you have for those that want to just jump into education?
The thing is, it just, you can try it out and it could be, become a mentor. And it's like, is this something, start working with one kid. And it's like, is this something you want to do? Or try if you want to volunteer, because I've seen it many times where, people are like, yeah, I want to do this. And they spend a couple days in the classroom and like, I don't know if I want to, it's a lot of work. So part of it is just kind of trying it out. And then even if your, let's say, degree is not in early childhood or what have you, there's different credentials and stuff that, that we actually have partnerships that we kind of work to make sure that some of that education is covered as well. So you can get your, child development associate credential to be able to kind of work with kids as well. So part of it is like, it has to come from in here that you would want to work with kids, because that's when it becomes less work and kind of more of a reason and passion of what you do.
Awesome. Robert, thank you very much for your time
Thank
and
you.
effort here. And guys, thank you very much for watching and listening. I'll see you guys soon.